I haven't even had the tier set for like a full day at this point, and I'm already starting to wonder what the future holds for this class. I think the most common thought on people's mind is that it might be overpowered. I think Blood DK in general has always been a problem damage-wise. If you didn't play in WoD and Legion, they had just basically an incredible damage coefficient on a single spell, that being Blood Boil, and that really tipped the scales in AoE scenarios, and especially at the time, they were incredibly powerful for a lot of different reasons. Self-survival was still as good as it ever was, but their damage was incredibly high as well. But this was almost always exclusively an AoE thing. Like, yeah, sure, they can do good single target, but were they going to beat actual DPS? Pretty unlikely, I think. So we're at this weird position here where I'm wondering, like, you know, obviously I'm raiding casually now, not anything super serious. This is the first time I ever did Skolex, which I believe is like the only real single target fight in there. I mean, I guess you can count Raglan too at times. This is kind of like the new fight to take a look at single target. So I've been looking a lot at logs on this fight. And obviously we mostly talk about Mythic Plus, but I think like raiding is the key to unlocking whether or not this needs to be adjusted or not. Because like I said, they've always been pretty good at times in 5-mans. They've always been able to do just as much damage. In fact, you go watch the WoD challenge mode videos we were talking about in a previous video, I was top damage on every single one of those dungeons. Like Blood DK, AoE was insane. They were the best AoE damage dealer until the whole soul cap thing came out and everything got nuts. And that was why it was so fun to play back then, because they were just frankly overpowered and I sucked at it. You know what I mean? I just kind of went in there, spam Blood Boil. You had to drain the diseases at the time. So nothing new there. And it was very normal. But now we're in this weird territory where it's starting to wonder, you know, I'm starting to wonder what the reality of this being, the fact that it's a single target juggernaut as well. And in AoE, it can be very good too, obviously. I think a lot of you guys have been talking about, you know, some of the top Blood DKs in the world and people who are like raiding at the highest level, super geared characters with the jailer mates and stuff. I don't have that, you know what I mean? So I don't know what that's going to look like. I think there's probably a combination of things. Like, it's not necessarily the character that's overpowered. It might not just be the 4-set either. A lot of people are saying that that jailer's mace is the actual overpowered element that a lot of people are seeing in keys right now. But yeah, after I did Skolex tonight, the fact that I was 6th on DPS on a single target encounter just seems kind of crazy to me. And yeah, 97 percentile, but you know, a lot of the Blood DKs doing that fight probably don't actually have 4-set yet. So it's a bit too early in the season to be making too many conclusions and based on percentiles there. But I don't think I've ever played through a time when a tank was reliably above any type of DPS on single target. Like, this is just kind of weird, I think is probably the way to put it. This is just not normal. And it makes me wonder, like, did Blizzard expect this? Like, is this what they wanted? And I'm not really sure if the answer is no, to be honest, because it does seem like a lot of tanks are in a boat right now where they're gaining tremendous amounts of DPS. And when compared to actual damage dealers, you start to wonder, like, this can't be an accident, right? Like, we just saw Bear and they got nerfed, right? And they're still doing crazy overall in keys. You know, granted, I haven't played a lot of other tanks, but people are telling me Brewmaster is just as good and Prop Pally could be very, very good too. And I still know a few people who tell me Warrior is one of the best offensive tanks in the game. So it really just kind of comes down to raid and single target in general. Is it okay that tanks are doing more damage than other targets? So I guess my question is, like, are other tanks actually doing this much single target? So I don't really have any way to answer that just based off me tanking keys because I'm the only tank in there. But we can easily take a look at the raid situation here. So let's take a look at what the overall perspective looks like and we can make a conclusion based on that. The problem point comes when looking at averages, because there's so many people without tier, I'd imagine, still doing these bosses. I mean, I don't think there's any way to actually sort by that here on Warcraft logs, but you can see this is again Skolex, this is on heroic, and the numbers are kind of weird because you see Blood DK actually 4th, right? Then you look at the maximum and things really start to confuse you. Blood DK has a maximum of 11,800. That's ridiculous. But Prop Pally has an even higher one, and Prop Warrior is not far behind. But when you look at the actual averages, the averages are 7,000 DPS lower than the maximum. And so that's what's really causing a lot of confusion now, I think, is a lot of people are looking at this and being like, yo, this tank is an outlier, this tank is out of control, blah, blah, blah. But they're comparing it to characters or other scenarios that don't include a fully decked out 4-piece and like an optimized way. So obviously, like, if you're doing 11k DPS as a tank on a boss, yeah, that looks pretty overpowered. But that's not even the highest recorded parse for a tank. It's Protection Paladin is number 1, right? But then the outliers really show, like, Brewmaster is pretty bad, and then Demon Hunter is really bad. 7,000 is the max there. And so my immediate answer to the question question, is Blood DK overpowered? Should it get nerfed? Is Prop Pally gonna get nerfed too? What about Warrior? You know, what about Bear and all these other situations? So, you know, I keep coming back to it. It feels like this is just what Blizzard expected. I mean, I think it's no surprise to see that the tank tier sets are really dominating everybody right now. They're making a big impact on keys and also in raids. It's very, very powerful. And I'm sure there's some really good DPS ones as well, and maybe even healing ones. I mean, like, this literally like doubled my DPS. Like, before I had 2 set to now me having 4 set, my DPS actually doubled. Now, honestly, just the 4 set alone. Like, look, this is from the normal Skolex I did on Tuesday. I did not have 4 set yet. I still only had 2 set. I did 4.1k. This is the 4 set. I did it on Heroic the same week, 7.5k. So literally within 20 some hours, I gained over 3,000 DPS. And guess what? That item is a LFR item. That's kind of the ultimate issue here, is that like this set bonus is just so wacky. It's so out of line with everything else that's ever been in the game. There's been great legendaries and trinkets and, you know, over budget items, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody gain 3,000 DPS by equipping something. Even the old 4 sets like in Legion and stuff, like they were good, but I don't remember them ever being this strong. Like, I certainly don't remember them making Blood DK like this. But then when you start to look at Prop Pally and you see like literally every single person in the top million using Venthyr, and you look at the damage breakdown of them as well, it's like, okay, you know what, man, that doesn't even look that different. Like, you know what I mean? It's actually the exact same thing for me. And whether or not that's the set bonus doing all of that, I don't know. I don't really play the other specs. I don't really understand how it works, but yeah, it does seem like Blood DK is not an outlier in that. So it comes down to the question, do you think that like multiple tanks, maybe all tanks, are overpowered? And for me, the big thing here is like just the fact that, like, you know, I can easily see myself beating DPS reliably. Like, I just did this key, you know, these are with guys who are not super serious about the game. They're, you know, relatively casual. They're good players, but they don't really take progression serious, and I was reliably doing more DPS than every one of them on pretty much every single boss. Like, I actually pretty sure I beat them on all 4 bosses, or actually all 5. We did theater, so that's theater, 9k overall. That's with Tombstone, you know, and a big part of that is 61% uptime on Dancing Rune Weapon. And there's multiple times where I chose not to use it because I didn't want it to potentially fall off while we were running from pack to pack or something like that. And just the fact that I have this up for 61% of the time in a dungeon, it's like, dude, that's a lot of extra parry you get. Like, it's not just offense. Even though the spec feels like it's kind of playing like an offense, like almost like a DPS at this point, you're also kind of just like a god against a single target. Like, there's no way a single mob, it's gonna have a lot of trouble killing me through Dancing Rune Weapon with 75 stacks of Endless Rune Waltz, which I am having a lot of trouble keeping up as well. People are telling me they're doing it easily. Well, congratulations. I'm having a lot of trouble with that. But Inside Lust, man, is it easy. I also did Plaguefall for the first time since I got the 4 set as well, and my god, that first boss with the haste puddle, the haste buff from the Necrolord, and also Bloodlust, I literally extended Dancing Rune Weapon into the minutes. Like, the number on the screen was in the 60s. Like, it's ridiculous how long it lasts. It basically would have lasted for, you know, if we fought that pack for like an infinite amount of time, it would have expounded to a point where it would just never expire. Like, if I sat there for an hour, I'd have Dancing Rune Weapon for the rest of the day. So ultimately the question is, can it be nerfed? Because, like, you know, they nerfed the bear one, and I think the problem with the bear one was just like how much uncapped AOE that did. It wasn't seemingly doing any craziness on single target. So there's a clear outlier here. You know, we do have other tanks doing just as good, but should tanks be beating DPS? I think honestly, no. I don't think that's good at all. Being a tank and doing that good single target kind of really starts to blur the line between why the game is the game and how its PvE formula works. You know, like, if you have a DPS who can do good damage but is incredibly flimsy, and if they make a few small mistakes, they might die, or you have a tank who's doing pretty comparable DPS and they basically are unkillable, why would you bring DPS? Why would you bring a healer is the better question. Like, why did we do that dungeon with a healer? We could have literally just brought, you know, all these overpowered tanks, and that probably would have been the best way to do it. So it turns into, like, you know, kind of degenerate gameplay, but I don't know. For me, it's fun. You know, I enjoy it. Personally, I enjoy it. Do I want it to change? No, certainly not. But should it change? Yeah, I think philosophically it's not good. I don't think this is healthy for the game. And if this happened in season 1, we'd have a serious serious problem. The thing is, at the end of expansions, it's a little bit easier to just kind of say, you know, whatever happens tuning wise goes. If a DPS or a healer is crazy, you're probably not too worried about it being changed. The tank though kind of starts to blur the line, like I said, because you know what you really don't want to see is 20 tanks doing mythic raiding. Then you have a real problem on your hand. And from Blizzard's perspective, maybe the players would enjoy it, but I don't think many people want to be doing something like that. But it all comes back to the question, can it be nerfed? I'm not sure how many people, especially those who might not play Blood DK, understand what's actually happening here. And I don't really either, to be honest. Like, I literally completely missed that this happened. As far as I could understand, this is the day that it happened, and I still don't even understand what this patch note reads, but it says March 11th, 4-set bonus, fixed an issue where the free Heartstrike counterattack was providing more stacks of endless rune waltz than intended during Dancing Rune Weapon. To me, that sounds like a nerf, but apparently they changed fundamentally how the set bonus works. What I do know about it was in the PTR, it looked like it was going to be really overpowered there as well. We were basically having like infinite Dancing Rune weapons, and I remember even saying like, yo, there's no way this will go live. It's so ridiculous. But it was because the 4-set's Heartstrike element. So if for some reason you don't know what it does, the 4-set is when you take damage, you have a chance equal to 100% of your parry chance to lash out, Heartstriking your attacker. But it also adds an extra rune weapon to it, which I'm not even sure if that was there in the first iteration of the set. But so you would think that the 4-set really doesn't do that much considering what you see just from Heartstrike. It's good, but it's nothing crazy. And on the PTR, it was the opposite. That element of it was insane, and it's a very different version of it now, but it was basically whenever you took damage, whenever you got auto attacked or something like that, you would just lash out Heartstrikes, and it would just be firing them out crazily. Like I would just be in packs, and I would not even be pressing my character's buttons, and I would be getting 100 and some runic power. Like it'd just be doing it for me. It was out of control, and obviously it would have been ridiculously powerful. But the thing is, that version would have been only overpowered for 5-mans. In raid, it would have been pretty bad because if you weren't actually tanking, it would not have done anything. And so that's the difference here. I don't know exactly if they planned on whatever happened with this to actually occur the way it did, but now it's just overpowered no matter what. Obviously, it's ideal if you're the one tanking. You know, Blood DK has a lot of options to have lashback damage, but Crimson Rune is the best thing that they can get out of that. And it's even better if you're in multiple target situations because then you have a much higher chance of getting that free Heartstrike to help you. But you could honestly do pretty insane numbers even if you're not tanking. So I'm not exactly sure what actually changed. Like obviously I didn't have the 4-set before that happened. I tested it on the PCR, then they changed it and I didn't touch it since. But from what I could tell was at one point the extra Dancing Rune weapons, they weren't actually contributing to the stacks. And before that, so you just use Dancing Rune weapon and maybe it would extend a normal amount or whatever, but you'd only be getting 1 stack every time you Heartstrike. I don't know if that's true or not, but now it works that you have 3 Dancing Rune weapons, so you're getting 1.5 seconds extended every time. So outmatching the global as long as you have a decent amount of haste. And the most important thing is you're getting 3 stacks from every Heartstrike you use. Now that free Heartstrike that gives, that's only actually giving 1 Heartstrike. And that makes me think like that was the change there, that was actually giving 3, and then they nerfed that to only give 1, and now regular Heartstrike gives 3. I don't really know. I haven't followed it. Like I said, I didn't have 4-set. I didn't even have any set bonuses at all when they changed that. But since then, the trajectory of the spec has changed. And whether or not it's intended, I don't actually know. Whether or not it needs to be nerfed, yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised if they nerfed it. The problem is, how would you nerf this, right? Like, there is no way to actually nerf this without just completely destroying it. Like it would go from insanely strong to really bad. It's like the only way that I could think of is that you either change the duration of the stacks, you get less power from the stacks, maybe 0.5% strength every stack, still only stacking to 75. I mean, like one way that can you think of a conceptual way that they can change this that it wouldn't just absolutely decimate this 4-set and the set bonus in general? I can't. I really can't. So I think right now, you know, we're in a situation where a lot of tanks are benefiting from it. Whether or not anyone is overpowered, you know, like even the whole bear situation, I could see bear being fine, man, because you know the AOE damage is one thing and that makes it strong in 5-mans, but I think Blizzard really focuses on single target because, you know, even in 5-mans, like single target is really important. There's a lot of times where even on trash you're fighting a dangerous single target, and killing that efficiently is just as important as doing big pulls. So I think there's a dangerous line to be dealing with here because you have a weird kind of synergy with how DPS and tanks relate, you know. And my biggest problem this season up until this week was DPS threat. It was really frustrating to have to constantly deal with these DPS with foresight, pulling threat, and mobs running all around. It's making it very hard to survive. Obviously, that's in the back burner now, very likely. So I'm not complaining, you know what I mean? I'm happy with where it's at, but I do think it's a little weird that they're actually doing so much good single target. And, you know, AoE is one thing, but single target really kind of breaks the game because you have so many more scenarios where single target is really needed. And like raid fights, you know, like the fact that I'm literally like beating a lot of DPS in a raid, and even if, you know, it's a casual raid and people aren't super serious about it, it's like, man, that's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy to me, because now it feels like we have another player, you know what I mean? We just gained a DPS. I basically doubled my DPS just by equipping gear that's, you know, honestly not even that good. This gear is actually really bad. 239 item level, actually lower than the piece I had in that slot before this season started. So, you know, props to Blizzard. If they wanted to make really powerful stuff, if this is working as intended, my God, you did it. You certainly did. I think a lot of people just want like crazy power. Like they just want to be really overpowered. And, you know, there has to be a line there you have to draw, because you can't have everybody be overpowered. If everybody's overpowered, then nobody's overpowered. So I think there's always this kind of like carousel where you're wondering what the most overpowered spec is. And, you know, I think a lot of people do chase that. I'd recommend just playing what you enjoy. Most likely that's for me, Blood DK. It always seems to be in one direction or another, a little bit hard to balance. Historically, I would have said that would have been their tanking, and their defense was really good all expansion pretty much, whereas their offense was really bad for most of the expansion. Now it's starting to feel like maybe things are a little bit too far. So let me know what you guys think. I don't really know, you know, what the future looks like here. I'm just trying to live in the moment right now, enjoy it for while it lasts. If it does get changed, I'd be very interested to see how they change it. I think at this point they would either have to do a completely like a fundamental change, like they would have to change how the set bonus works in general, or they would just risk completely decimating it, and that would be really unfortunate. So let me know what you guys think. Creation Catalyst on its way out, so in the next few weeks everybody will have access to it, and I do think it's going to really change the game's landscape. You might start to see some pretty crazy things, like just all tanks no problem. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.